Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. We're going to start discussing the events and other supports in the game. So first up we have Cannon Fodder. It's a villain event. It costs 0, so you don't need any resources to pay for it. And it says deal one of your non-unique characters damage equal to the value of an opponent's die showing ranged or melee damage, then remove that die. So essentially this acts like a one-shot Guardian ability. Guardian lets you resolve damage against a character with Guardian, the keyword, and then you remove that die. So what that essentially does, it's dice removal for one, for 0 resources, and it allows you to choose which die to deal damage to that character with. So if they're sitting on, let's say, 1 range damage, +2 range damage, and another +2 range damage, you can resolve the 1 non-modified damage, and then leave them with 2 modified sides that they can't do anything with. So it gives you dice control. You do take damage on a character because of it, but it only works on non-uniques. So you're probably going to be using this on something like your Stormtroopers, Tusken Raiders, and things like that. And that'll keep your main characters protected. So if I'm running Vader and 2 Stormtroopers, for example, I might, throw this on a Stormtrooper. So when they go to resolve their damage, instead of resolving a possible 5 damage, they can't resolve any of it because it's all modified. So the Stormtrooper takes 1 damage, meaning that they're going to either have to roll another character in and hope to get the non-modified damage, or just re-roll entirely. And the 0 cost is great on this because you can just throw it out and then still have resources left over to do something else. So essentially, it acts like Guardian, like a one-off of Guardian, which is pretty cool. We're going to move into the next event. Here we are with our next event. This is Closing the Net. This is another villain card. 1 resource. Force an opponent to choose and remove one of their dice. You may then place this event on the bottom of your deck instead of discarding it. So you get dice removal out of it. They get to choose which die to remove, so you don't have any control over that. But the interesting thing is it goes to you, or can go to the bottom of your deck instead of your discard pile. You can discard it if you want to, but it goes to the bottom of your deck, so possibly you'll be able to play it again. If you're running 2 of these, you could potentially just keep cycling these into your deck. And what that might do is give you that just little bit of survivability when you're playing against a mill deck. So when you play this, instead of discarding it, you can put it in your deck, on the bottom of your deck. And then if they're milling you, you would always have a card in your deck, unless they're doing something like Padme, which mills off the top. So Padme generally will mill from the deck as well as hand. So it might not help there, but it might give you that little bit of survivability to get off enough damage to finish your characters off before you're completely milled out. So you play it, goes to your deck, you draw it next turn, play it again, goes back to your deck, and then you play your damage or you do whatever you need to do. And if you still have at least a card in your hand and a card in your deck, basically you can survive. You only get completely milled out when your hand is empty and your deck is empty. So if you have this in your deck and you do enough damage to defeat their characters, or a character if they have 1 left, this is still in your deck, you could still win. So that's a pretty good event. It does cost 1 resource, but that's not bad, especially if you know you're going to be playing against a mill deck. It might not be a bad idea to put 1 or 2 of these in one of your decks. Be right back with the next event. Here we are with our next event. We are looking at Endless Ranks. It costs 5 resources, so it's kind of expensive, but for what it does, I think the cost is well balanced. So return one of your defeated non-unique red characters to the game with no damage on it. That means, so if you're running, let's say, Captain Phasma and some Stormtroopers, the Stormtroopers are going to get Guardian because of Phasma's ability. Can, divert damage away from Phasma, have one of the Stormtroopers get defeated, then pay the 5 resources to bring that Stormtrooper back, and basically just come back to life with no damage. So you're able to keep Phasma alive for longer. I'm using Phasma as the example because this is probably the card you're probably going to be running in her deck anyway. If you're running with like something like 2 Stormtroopers, or even some other non-uniques, this will work with the Death Troopers once they come out because they're red non-uniques as well. But basically, it just brings it back to life and gives you, essentially, you have a fresh new character that you can play, you can bring in. Essentially, it's they're using battle droids as the artwork, so the battle droids, one gets defeated, another one just comes in and replaces it. It's going to work with Stormtroopers, Death Troopers, any other non-uniques that are red on the villain side that they might come out with in the future, you can use this. Again, the cost is kind of high, but for being able to bring a character back to life, it's pretty good. And then also with Phasma, it's going to bring that character back to life, and you're still going to have Guardian, so you can then still keep directing damage off of her, have her attack other stuff, defeat other characters. If you're running two of these, you can bring back two characters, and then if you have ways to get something out of your discard pile, you can do it again. Again, you're going to have to pay the 5 resources every time, so you're probably going to want to run a deck that has quite a good amount of resource generation to actually pull this off. But this could, like change the tide of the game. Be like, oh, look, I defeated your Stormtrooper, and you're just down to Captain Phasma now. And then it's like 5 resources, endless ranks. Now you have to deal with Phasma and another Stormtrooper. So endless ranks could be very good. Again, expensive, but for what it does, I think well costed. And if you're running a lot of resources, you can definitely get this out. Be right back with the next card. And here we are now with Occupation. It's a villain event, costs 2 resources. You can only play it if you control the battlefield, so you're not going to be able to play this in the first round, but you play in the battlefield, and then in the next round, you'll be able to play it. And it forces an opponent to lose all of their resources. So you might want to pay attention to, how many resources your opponent has. Are they hoarding their resources? Are they spending them as soon as they're getting them? If they're, saving their resources, they may be trying to save up for something big, like a launch bay or a Millennium Falcon. Or if you're playing against like Finn and Poe, they might be trying to get like an ATST out or something like that. And if they're doing that, you might want to, claim the battlefield, and then when it goes to the next turn, play this, have them lose all their resources. They might have the Millennium Falcon and launch bay in hand, but now they're not going to have the resources needed to pay for it. So it does take a little bit of setup in the fact that you have to control the battlefield, but it can definitely mess with an opponent's strategy if you essentially just deny them the resources needed to pay for something that is fairly expensive. So if they're sitting on like 3 resources at the end of a round and they haven't spent them, they're going to get 2 resources at the beginning of the next round, which would give them 5, so they can then drop their launch bay or their Falcon. And then, you go to the next round and you immediately deny them the resources, and they're sitting on 2 cards in their hand that they're really not going to be able to use. So that's Occupation. I think it's very good. I run a couple of these in pretty much any deck that I'm running red with. I had it in my Vader and Stormtrooper deck just to prevent my opponents from being able to pretty much do a lot of stuff on their turn. We'll be right back with the next card. And the final card we're going to look at today is Probe. It's another villain event and costs 0 resources, so very good. You don't have to pay any resources to play it. Look at 2 random cards in an opponent's hand and discard any of those cards that are events. So not only are you getting to look at their hand for free, you're getting to remove, or you're looking at 2 cards in their hand for free, you get to remove any of them that are events. And let's say you don't even pull events out of their hand to look at, you're still being able to look at 2 cards in their hand and then can see possibly what kind of strategy we're going to do, what they might be trying to play next, and so on, or even what kind of deck they're running. So even if you don't actually pull off the thing where you discard something, you're still looking at their hand. And if it's events, they get discarded. So Probe is very cool because it just costs 0 resources. Look at their hand, discard any, look at 2 cards, discard any of them that are events. You still will have seen some of their hand. If they're only down to 2, you get to look at basically their entire hand. And I think anything that lets you look at your opponent's hand is pretty powerful because you can then formulate a strategy around what you just saw. So that's Probe. I'm currently not running any of these in any of my decks currently, but I'm probably going to start building some more red villain decks soon, and I'm going to include at least 1 or 2 probes when I build those decks. And those decks, when I build them, will be available on here as well to look at. But that's going to do it for today's video. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. Until then, take care.